Margot Kessler grabbed a fistful of her stepdaughter's hair and threw her down the stairs. Then she counted the money out loud so Nora could hear every bill land. 20, 30, 40. She kicked the duffel bag after her. She's yours. We're square. Nora hit the floor on her knees in front of a man in a black coat and did not cry. She counted exits instead. One door, one car, no one coming. And the monster they sold her to crouched down, held out his hand, and said the first kind words spoken in that house in 3 years. Get up, not on that floor. If you're watching this, subscribe and follow Nora's story all the way to the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from because I want to see how far this story travels. Nora Kessler heard the car before anybody else in the house did, and that was not luck. That was 3 years of practice. She was at the kitchen sink area with her hands in cold water when the engine came up the hill and cut off. One door opened, one door closed. One set of footsteps on wet pavement, slow even the walk of a man who had never in his life been nervous about arriving anywhere. She turned off the tap and stood there dripping. Nora, Margot's voice floated in from the front room, sweet as syrup poured over broken glass. Come here, sweetheart. Sweetheart. That was the tell. Margot Kessler used soft words the way other people used a hammer, and she only ever reached for them when there was somebody watching. Nora dried her hands. She folded the towel. She set it square on the counter, because in that house, even a crooked towel could turn into a 2-hour argument, and then she walked out. Margot was standing by the fireplace in the burgundy dress, hair done, lipstick on. Nora's stomach dropped because in 12 years she had learned exactly one reliable rule about her stepmother. Margot did not put on lipstick for anything that was going to be good for Nora. And there was a man in her father's armchair. What is this? Nora said. Sit down. I'd rather stand. I said sit down, Nora. She didn't move. The man in the chair spoke and his voice was low and flat and unhurried like somebody reading numbers off a page. You're Nora. It was not a question. She answered anyway. Yes. Rafael Castellano. She had never heard the name. She would learn later that half the city knew it and the other half worked very hard at pretending they didn't. She would learn later that men who owed Rafael Castellano money slept badly and men who lied to him did not sleep at all. But standing there in her father's old cardigan with dishwater still on her wrists, the name was just a name. Somebody needs to tell me what's happening in my house. It isn't your house, Margot said. That's rather the point. Margot. Your father left debts. You've known that for years. My father left debts that you made. That's an ugly thing to say in front of a guest. It's a true thing to say in front of a guest. Nora's voice stayed level. She'd learned early that raising it only gave Margot something to work with. I have paid down $11,000 of it myself. 2 jobs. 3 years. Every receipt is in a shoebox under my bed because you won't let me put anything in the safe. Margot's face did something quick and cold behind the makeup. It was there for half a second and then it was gone because there was an audience and Margot always performed better with an audience. An arrangement has been made, she said. What arrangement? Mr. Castellano extended significant credit to this household. That credit has come due. Nora went very still. How much? $40,000. The number hit the room like something falling from a height. Nora's brain did what it always did when she was frightened, which was arithmetic. 40,000, 2 jobs. Even if she never ate again, never paid a bill, never spent $1 on herself, 4 years minimum. 5 if the interest was real. And standing there with her hands going cold, she understood something all the way down to the bone. This was not about money. Why is he in this house? Nora said. She was not looking at Castellano. She was looking straight at her stepmother. Why is he sitting in my father's chair? Because I made him an offer. What offer? Margot glanced at the man. Something passed between them. Then she said it. You'll go with him, in place of the debt. The silence afterward was so complete that Nora could hear the radiator ticking, and her own heart and absolutely nothing else on earth. Say that again. It's a fair arrangement. Say it again. You're 24 years old, no degree, no savings, no prospects. You have been a weight on this house since your father died, and I have carried you. Say it louder. You are going with him, Nora. You're selling me. Don't be dramatic. You put a price on me. Nora's voice cracked once and she hated it, and she hauled it back down. You put a price on me, and then you did your hair. It's already decided. Nora turned and looked at Rafael Castellano for the first time without flinching. She looked at him the way you look at the thing that is about to take everything from you, directly, because she had already decided there was no point in looking away from it. You bought me. He held her eyes. He did not glance at Margot for help. That is what was offered, he said, and you took it. I did. Then you're a monster. Something crossed his face. Fast gone, and it was not offense, and it was not guilt, and she had no name for it yet. He said nothing at all. I'm not going. She turned back to Margot. You can't sell a person. This is not a debt. This is not legal. There are laws, there are courts, there are... Your name is on the paper. Nora stopped breathing. What? Your father signed those loans in both names, his and yours. Margot tilted her head and her voice went soft and awful. Oh, he never told you. Well, that is unfortunate. Nora's hands went from cold to numb. She thought about her father. She thought about the last year of him sick and scared and doing things that made no sense. Papers on the kitchen table at 2 in the morning. Restructuring, refinancing. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. I'm making sure you're all right after. She had thought it was insurance. She had thought it was savings. She had never asked the right questions because she had been too busy being terrified of losing him. He had tried to build her a floor. Somebody had turned it into a trapdoor. You did that, Nora said quietly. He was on morphine by August. You sat at that table with him, and you put my name on it. He signed it. He couldn't read a menu by August. He signed it, Margot repeated, and you're free to fight it. I'm sure some lawyer would love your sad little story. Of course, while you're fighting, the interest keeps running, and Mr. Castellano's patience, as I've explained, has already run out. Nora stood very still. She was doing the thing she always did when she was most afraid, which was to pull everything inward. Go quiet, go small. Find the center of herself that nobody in this house had ever managed to reach. She found it. She held on. Then she turned back to the man in the chair. If I go with you, what happens to me? You live in my house, under my protection. You follow my rules, and if I break them, then we have a problem. Do you hurt people? The room went dead quiet. Margot made a small, strangled noise in her throat. Rafael Castellano looked at Nora Kessler like she was the first person in years who had asked him that to his face. Yes, he said, when they give me a reason. Have I given you one? Not yet. Then say it plainly because I need to hear it out loud. Am I going to be hurt tonight? No. Tomorrow. No, ever. He waited one beat too long before he answered, and she would think about that beat for weeks because a liar would have filled it instantly. Not by me, he said. Nora nodded once. Then she walked out of the room. She packed in 11 minutes. She knew it was 11 because she checked her father's watch when she started and again when she finished. 3 years in that house had taught her to measure everything because Margot liked to tell her later that time had passed differently than it had. She took the watch. She took her expired EMT card still in its plastic sleeve, 14 months out of date. She took 2 spiral notebooks from the supply chain program she'd quit in her second year when the diagnosis came. She took 1 photograph, 3 changes of clothes. She did not take a single thing Margot had ever given her. Sloane was waiting in the hallway with her arms crossed. Sloane was 26 and had her mother's eyes and her mother's talent for cruelty disguised as carelessness. She looked at the duffel bag and she smiled, and it was almost exactly Margot's smile. The meanness had come down clean generation to generation, nothing lost in the handoff. Have fun, Sloane said. Nora looked at her. I hope the money lasts. It won't. Sloane's smile faltered. Excuse me. 4 cards, 2 in your mother's name, 1 in my father's. Nora shifted the bag on her shoulder, which is fraud, incidentally, since he's been dead 3 years. I did the books in this house, Sloane. I know every number in it. I know exactly how much of that 40,000 is actually yours. Something moved in Sloane's face. Not guilt. She didn't have the machinery for guilt, but something next door to it, the understanding that a line had just been stepped over and could not be stepped back across. You should be grateful, Sloane said. She could have put you out on the street. She just did. Nora walked past her. She just found a way to get paid for it. She went down the stairs and out the front door. And the thing that stayed with her afterward, the detail that surfaced at strange hours for months, was not the hand in her hair or the money counted out loud. It was that no said goodbye. 12 years in that house, and the door just closed behind her. Rafael Castellano was standing by the car. He opened the back door himself, not the driver. Him. She got in. The drive took 50 minutes. She did not ask where they were going. She sat with her hands folded and her bag between her feet and thought carefully about three things: what she knew, what she didn't know, and what she needed to find out before morning. She was not going to cry. She had done far too much of that already in a house where her tears were treated like currency and spent on nothing. Halfway there, he spoke without turning his head. You said 11,000. She looked over. What? In there. You told her you'd paid down 11,000 yourself. You said you had receipts. I do. Where? Shoebox under my bed, which I just left in that house, so congratulations to her. He was quiet for a moment. Do you remember the dates? All of them. All of them, he repeated. Every payment, every amount, every check number. She said it flatly, not as a boast. I have a good memory for numbers. It's the only thing I've ever owned that nobody could take off me. He looked out his own window for a long stretch of road. Then he said, write them down when we get there, tonight while it's fresh. Why borrow? Because I am not a careless man about paperwork, Rafael Castellano said, and because somebody in that house is. Nora sat with that for the rest of the drive and did not let one single thing show on her face. The house was on a cliff above cold water. Two men in dark coats stood at the door and stepped back without a word when he came up the steps. A severe-faced woman was waiting inside. Marta Vogel, I run this house. Come with me. 2 flights up, Marta opened a door. Breakfast is at 7. Mr. Castellano expects punctuality, not because he's cruel, because he's exact. There is a difference, and you will find it faster if you stop bracing every time somebody enters a room. Marta paused in the doorway. There is a lock on your door. On the inside, you may use it. Nora looked at the small brass latch, and something happened in her chest that she was not prepared for at all. On the inside, she said, yes. My door at home didn't have one. Marta's expression did not change, but something behind it did. No, she said, I don't imagine it did. She stepped back into the hall. You are not a prisoner here. You are also not free to leave. I'd suggest you spend the next few days learning the difference between those two things. Most people never manage it. Then she was gone. Nora sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her palms flat against her thighs and made herself breathe. She ran the checklist the way she always did when she was scared. What is the immediate danger? What is the next step? What do I have? What do I know? She was alive. She was not hurt. She was in a room with a lock she controlled. She had her father's watch, 2 notebooks, a dead card, and her own head. It was not nothing. She got up and slid the latch home, and then she stood there with her hand on it for a full minute because that small metal sound was the most unfamiliar thing she had heard in 3 years. She did not sleep easily, but she slept. And when she woke, nobody was screaming at her to get up. No cup thrown at a wall to wake the house. No footsteps outside her door at 3 in the morning because Margot was drunk and in the mood to be vicious. She came downstairs at 6:58. I was already at this table with coffee and a tablet coat off for the first time since she'd seen him. Sit, he said. She sat. Not because he told her to, because she'd decided the most useful thing she could do that morning was watch, and she could watch better from a chair than from a doorway. Marta brought food, real food, eggs, toast, fruit, the kind of breakfast that takes somebody's time and attention, not the kind that gets left out when a person remembers you exist. Nora ate every bite. She did not pretend she wasn't hungry. Pride was a luxury she had been too poor for too long to afford. He watched her eat. She watched him watch her. It was not comfortable, but it was honest, and she had decided a long time ago that honest was something she could work with. You have questions, he said when she finished. Hundreds. Ask 3. She made them count. 1, what do you actually want from me? Your presence, your compliance with the rules of this house, your silence about everything you see inside it. 2, what are the rules? You don't leave the property without an escort. You don't discuss this house with anyone who works for me, and that includes Marta. You don't contact your stepfamily. That last one isn't a hardship. Something moved across his face again. The same fast thing, gone before she could read it. 3, he said. She put her fork down and looked straight at him. When does the dead end? When I decide it has. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have this morning. Then understand something about me. She kept her voice level, kept her hands still, kept all of it controlled the way she'd had to control everything for 3 years. I don't function afraid. I go stupid. I miss things. If you want anything useful out of me, and I assume you do, because nobody pays $40,000 for company, then I need to know where the lines are so I can work inside them. Can you give me that? He looked at her for a long time, long enough that she thought she'd pushed too hard, burned the small margin she had. Then he said, "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone easier to manage." "Sorry to disappoint." "You didn't," he said, and picked up his coffee and went back to his tablet. The conversation was over. But something had moved. A quarter of an inch one way or the other, and Nora felt it. She felt it the way a person feels a door that has been locked a very long time shift slightly in its frame. Not open, but no longer completely shut. She spent the next 3 days doing what she had always done in places where she wasn't sure she was safe. She learned it from the edges, quietly. She learned that he left early and came back late. She learned that the men who came through the front door were careful around him in a specific way, not frightened exactly, more like practiced. She learned that Marta had been in that house 11 years and would have walked into traffic for him without changing expression. And she learned the strangest thing of all, the thing that unsettled her more than the guards or the cameras or the water. Nobody in that house looked at her with cruelty. Not one person. They looked at her with curiosity, some of them with pity, one or two with suspicion, but not cruelty. She had genuinely forgotten there were houses like that. On the third afternoon, she was carrying a stack of folded linens down the second-floor hallway, which Marta had not asked her to do and had not stopped her from doing when she passed the office and heard voices through the door. She did not stop walking. She was not careless. But she heard 4 words with perfect clarity. The Ferrara paperwork cleared. Then Rafael Castellanos' voice, flat and cold, in a way she had not heard from him yet. "Which vessel?" Then a second voice one she couldn't place. Same as last time, same manifest signature. Then Castellano again, quieter, and it was the quiet that made her arms go to gooseflesh. 72 hours. That load is clean by Friday, or somebody in this building is going to stand in front of me and explain why it isn't. Nora kept walking. She set the linens down in the laundry room and stood with both hands flat on the table. Ferrara. She turned the word over the way she had once turned over a duplicate invoice code in her father's books when she was 19 years old. Not because it meant anything yet, because it might. She put it away in the place where she kept things that mattered. She had no way of knowing, standing there with her hands on a stack of warm towels in a house on a cliff above cold water, that the name she had just decided to remember would try to have her killed before the winter was out. Orchestrated narrative momentum through interrogation. Reveal and emotional pivots seamlessly. Orchestrated narrative momentum through interrogation, reveal, and emotional pivots seamlessly. She took Theo Lanigan into the small room off the kitchen at 9 the next morning, and she took nobody with her. Bruno stood in the doorway and did not like it. "I'm not leaving you alone with him." "Yes, you are. He helped put a hole in the man I work for. And if you stand behind him with that face on, he'll spend the whole hour deciding whether he's going to survive the room instead of deciding whether he's going to tell me the truth." Nora put her hand on the door. "Frightened people lie, Bruno. They lie fast, and they lie well, and then you can't unring it. Give me 40 minutes. 20. 40. Bruno stepped back. She sat down across from Theo with a folder in front of her, and her hands folded on top of it, and she said absolutely nothing at all. That was the whole technique. Anger would have given him something to push against. Threats would have given him a story to tell himself later that he'd held out, that he'd been brave. She gave him nothing. She just waited. He lasted 12 minutes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "Okay. I mean it. It wasn't supposed to be." His hands were shaking on the table. "You have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything," Nora said, "but I'll listen." And then he could not stop. Julian Voss had come to him 8 months ago, not with threats, with money and with a story, and the story was the part that got him. Voss told him Raphael was consolidating, that he was cutting out anybody who knew too much, that men who had given him a decade were being quietly retired, and that Voss himself was next, and that Theo would be after him. He was kind to me, Theo said. That's the stupid part. He was the only one who ever asked about my mother. I was kind to you because he needed something from you. That's what that kind of kindness is for. I know that now. You knew it then, Marsh, Porta said. You just wanted the money more than you wanted to know it. That's not a moral failing. Theo, that's being 26 and underpaid. But don't tell me you didn't know. Theo put his face in his hands. What did they ask you to do? Watch the secondary system. Note where he was at certain times. Send a text to a number. How many times? 4, including Saturday. Nora's hands went still on the folder. 4. 3 before. Nothing ever happened those times. I swear to God, nothing ever happened. His voice cracked. That's how I let myself keep doing it. I told myself I was just passing information. I wasn't part of anything. Nothing was happening. They were testing you, Nora said. Same way they tested the audits. What? 3 dry runs to see if you'd hold your nerve and to see if anybody upstairs noticed. Then on the 4th one, they used you. She leaned back. You weren't a spy, Theo. You were a piece of equipment they were calibrating. He made a sound she would remember for a long time. Voss is gone, she said. You know that. Yeah. Then here's the only question that matters this morning. After Voss disappeared, did anybody contact you? Theo lifted his head. And Nora watched a 26-year-old man make the single most important decision of his life in real time, and she did not help him with it. Once he said, different number 2 days after. What did they say? That the job wasn't finished, that I should stay in place. And what did you say? He looked at his hands. I said, okay. Nora sat with that. She thought about all the times in 3 years she had said okay to Margot. Okay, I'll cover it. Okay, I'll take the shift. Okay, I won't mention it. Because the alternative had felt unsurvivable. And because saying okay to something wrong is the cheapest thing in the world in the moment and the most expensive thing in the world afterward. She did not tell him that, but it went into the part of her that made decisions, and it stayed there. The second number, she said, do you still have it? I didn't delete anything. Say that again. I didn't delete anything. He pulled his phone out and put it on the table and pushed it toward her with 2 fingers like it was hot. I kept all of it, every message. I don't even know why. I kept thinking maybe if I kept it, I could. I don't know. I don't know what I thought. Nora picked it up. She photographed the number with her own phone, then the message threads, all of them in order. Then she put his phone back down in front of him. Stay in this room. Don't use that. Don't talk to anyone. What's going to happen to me? She stood up and looked at him and thought about all the things she wanted to say, which were complicated, and the one thing that was useful, which was simple. That's not my decision, she said, but you told me the truth when lying was free. I'll make sure that's on the record. She went straight upstairs. Raphael was out of bed and standing, which she had expected and was still angry about. Sit down. I'm fine. You were opened up 36 hours ago, and you're standing at a window being stubborn about it. Sit down, or I don't tell you what I've got. He sat. It cost him something to do it, and he did not let it show, and she noticed both halves of that. She told him all of it. The 4 contacts, the 3 dry runs, the second number after Voss was gone, which meant one thing and only one thing. Somebody above Voss, Raphael said. Somebody who was still running the network after you cut the head off it, which means you didn't cut the head off it. She held out her phone. That's the number. He took it. He looked at it for 3 full seconds, and on Rafael Castellano, 3 seconds was the equivalent of a man throwing a chair. You know it, she said. I know it. Who? He set the phone down. Damian Ferrara. Nora felt the floor of the room tilt slightly. Say that again. Ferrara, Miami. He and Voss go back 15 years from before either of them was anything. Raphael's voice had gone flat and cold. He's been trying to move north for 3. I've blocked him twice personally. He needs me off the board to get the New England corridor. Raphael, Nora's mouth had gone dry. The first week I was here, I was carrying linens past your office, and I heard you say a name through the door. He looked up. I heard you say the Ferrara paperwork cleared, she said, and you gave somebody 72 hours to make a load clean. The silence that followed had actual weight to it. That vessel, Raphael said slowly, was one of the 43. That vessel was the flagship of the 43. 9 ghost containers on one manifest. I flagged it 3 weeks ago and I never connected the name because I never once heard it said out loud again. Voss brought me that paperwork himself. He told me it was a legitimate freight partner out of Florida. He wasn't laundering money past you, Nora said, and her voice had dropped. He was building a road. Every ghost container was a paving stone. By the time Ferrara moved on, you physically half your port would already have been carrying his freight under your own signatures. And if anything ever came apart, the paper would have said you. Raphael did not move for a long moment. And Hargrove. Montreal is the northern anchor. Same architecture, same Thursday authorizations. She sat down hard in the chair beside him. That's why he came apart at that table, Raphael. He wasn't embarrassed. He was exposed. A man doesn't order a hit 40 minutes after dessert because a woman hurt his feelings. Connolly stepped out twice. Twice, I saw it and I filed it as nothing. Her jaw tightened. I'll be paying for that one for a while. Then pay for it later, Raphael said. Right now, tell me what he does next. He accelerates. She didn't have to think about it. Cutting his losses means admitting 2 years and an enormous amount of money went into Voss and Hargrove and produced nothing. Men like that don't absorb a loss quietly. They double down and he knows his window is closing because you're still breathing. I'd say 48 hours, maybe less. Then we have work to do. We, Nora said. We, Raphael said. The next 36 hours moved faster than anything she had ever lived through. Raphael worked the phone with the terrible efficiency of a man who had spent 20 years building relationships precisely for a week like this one. Calling in debts, repositioning people, making 4 separate phone calls that each lasted under 90 seconds and each rearranged something enormous. Bruno rebuilt the security of the house from the studs. Emmett kept the household running and the food coming and never once mentioned that he had not slept. And Nora went after the money. Because a man like Ferrara could not move on a house like this with enthusiasm alone. He needed people, and people needed paying, and paying left a shape, and shapes were the one thing in the world she could not stop seeing. She worked out of Raphael's office with full access to everything which she noticed and did not comment on, and she built a model of what Ferrara's operation had to look like, if her theory was right, and then she went hunting for the places where reality matched the model. She found the first match at 2 in the morning, a holding account in Delaware. Different shell from Voss's Nevada company, but the same incorporation agent, the same address, formatting, the same signature style, the same rhythm of small regular deposits building toward one large outbound transfer. The transfer was already scheduled, 47 hours out. She ran the number 3 times because she did not trust herself the first 2. Then she picked up the phone. He answered on the second ring. I found it, she said, the funding. Whatever he's doing, that's what pays for it, and it clears in 47 hours. How much? She told him. The silence on the other end went on long enough that she checked the screen to make sure the call was still connected. Say it again, Raphael said. She said it again. That's 2 years of accumulation, he said. That's every dollar he's put aside since the day he decided to take you. It's not operating capital, Raphael. It's the whole war chest. He built it slow specifically so nobody would see it. She was already typing. If we let it clear, he buys men and time. If we take it before it clears, he doesn't just lose the move on this house. He loses the ability to make any move at all for 18 months. Can you redirect it cleanly? I need 2 things. Authorization codes on the intermediate account, which you have, and somebody clean on the receiving end who can take that much money and hold it in a legitimate vehicle long enough that nobody can trace where it went. She stopped typing. It has to be somebody who would rather have your loyalty than that money. Do you have one of those? They said it at the same time. Bianchi. He'll want to know why, Raphael said. Tell him the truth. He already knows most of it. He's known for 2 years that look he gave you at dinner was a man being proven right. She paused. And he offered me a job 3 days ago, which means he's already decided we're worth investing in. He'll do it. Bianchi agreed in under 9 minutes. Nora had already built the structure by the time Raphael called back to tell her because she had assumed the yes and worked ahead of it, and she timed the redirect for the last possible quarter hour before the original transfer was set to clear so that Ferrara's people would have the smallest possible window to notice and reverse it. At 6:15 in the morning, 41 minutes out, she executed. Then she sat perfectly still for the 3 minutes it took the confirmation to come back. She was aware of her own heartbeat. She was aware that 2 years of one man's patient construction was coming apart inside a series of servers because a woman who had been sold for $40,000 had been paying attention. The confirmation came. She exhaled and pressed both palms flat on the desk and sat there just breathing. Then she typed one word to Raphael, done. His reply came in under 30 seconds. Come downstairs. He was in the kitchen, standing what she chose not to fight about. He had made 2 cups of coffee, and she noticed that too, and sat down and took the one he pushed toward her. Ferrara called me 20 minutes ago, he said. She looked up. Already? He knew the second it failed to clear. He called to discuss terms. Raphael turned the cup slowly. He was less composed than I have ever heard him. What did you say? I told him there were no terms. I told him his people inside my organization had been identified and removed. I told him his funding is no longer his funding. He looked at her. And I told him that if he comes near this coast again, I'll send complete documentation of everything his people did in my territory to the 3 other organizations he has arrangements with and let him explain it to them. That's not a threat about you. No, it's a threat about arithmetic. He has a great deal to lose if those men learn how he operates. Raphael's mouth moved slightly. He's already recalculating. This time the math is against him. Because somebody made sure it was. Yes, Raphael said, somebody did. Nora wrapped both hands around her cup and let herself feel tired for the first time in 3 days. The good kind, the kind that comes after you've put everything you have into something and it held. Theo, she said, I wondered when you'd get there. What happens to him? Raphael was quiet for a moment. Off security, off every system with access. Reassigned to the vehicles where the worst he can betray in me is a fuel receipt. He turned the cup again. He's young and he was worked by a professional. And you said his honesty was worth noting. You noted it. I noted it, Raphael said. A man who makes one bad choice and tells the truth about it is recoverable. A man who makes one bad choice and builds 9 lies on it is not. He looked at her steadily. I learned that from watching someone recently. She understood exactly who he meant. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. 3 days later, her phone rang with a number she had not looked at in 7 weeks. She stared at it for a full 5 seconds. Then she answered. Nora. Margot's voice, the modulated version, soft at the edges, almost convincing. If you hadn't spent 3 years learning its topography. I've been trying to reach you. I know, I've seen the calls. I've been worried about you. No, you haven't. A pause, longer than Margot would have liked. Things have been difficult here. There have been some financial complications and Sloan has had some trouble with. Margot, let me finish. No. Nora said it cleanly without heat. I know what this call is. You're in debt again, or Sloan is, and you've worked out that I have access to resources now that I didn't have before. And you've calculated that the right amount of softness and the right amount of guilt will get you what you want. After everything I did for you, there it is. I kept you in that house when I could have. Could have what? Nora said. Put me out, I cooked. I cleaned. I did your books. I paid bills with money I earned at 2 jobs, and I absorbed everything you aimed at me for 3 years. And when you ran out of ways to use me, you sold me to a stranger for a debt you built with your own hands and your own signature. The softness in Margot's voice slid off all at once. The thing underneath it, always there, finally just standing in the open. You ungrateful little. I'm not sending money, Nora said. I'm not intervening. I'm not doing anything for you or for Sloan except telling you clearly, and one time, that this is the last time I answer this number. Goodbye, Margot. She ended the call. She set the phone down on the desk, and then she sat very still and waited for it. The guilt, the familiar contraction, the fold, the automatic reflex that Margot had spent 3 years installing in her like a piece of software, the thing that always came the second she held a line. She waited. It didn't come. She waited a little longer to be certain, because she did not trust it, because she had never once in her life said no to that woman and not paid for it in her own chest afterward. Nothing, just the quiet of the office and the sound of the house around her and her own steady breathing. She blocked the number and went back to work. An hour later, Raphael put a document on the desk in front of her. She read it. Then she read it again. What is this? Your percentage of the recovery. Standard practice when someone in my organization generates a financial outcome of that size. He paused. You are in my organization. Raphael, this is. She looked at the number again. It was not $40,000. It was not anywhere near $40,000. This is too much. It's the correct percentage. I don't adjust percentages for sentiment. I don't know what to do with it. Yes, you do, he said. You've been managing money since you were 16. You'll do something careful with it, and in 5 years it will be worth more than it is today. She sat holding the paper, and it took her a moment to understand why her hands weren't entirely steady. And when she understood it, she had to put the page down on the desk. It was not the amount. It was that for the first time since her father died, Nora Kessler could leave any room she wanted to. She didn't sign anything for 2 days. She carried the document around the house in the pocket of her cardigan and took it out at odd hours and read the number again, like she was checking whether it had changed overnight. And on the third morning, Marta found her standing in the kitchen with it in her hand at 6 in the morning. You've been walking around with that paper for 2 days. I have. Why? Because the second I sign it, I stop being here because I have to be. Nora folded it. And then I have to answer a question I've been avoiding, which is whether I choose this. Marta poured herself coffee and said nothing for a moment. When I came to this house 11 years ago, she said, I had a brother in a great deal of trouble and no money and no options. Mr. Castellano settled it. He never once mentioned it again. Not once in 11 years. She turned around. For the first 3, I stayed because I owed him. And then one day I realized I'd stopped counting, and I was terrified because a debt is a very safe thing to hide inside. Nobody has to ask you why you're still there. Nora looked at her. That's the meanest thing anybody said to me in this house. Yes, Marta said. You're welcome. She signed it that afternoon. Then she went and found Raphael in the library because she had something to say, and she had learned in 7 weeks that saying things out loud in that room worked better than saying them anywhere else. I was standing when she came in, and he looked better than he had since the night of the attack. The controlled tension he always carried settled back into something more like his natural state. I want to renegotiate my position here, Nora said. Something moved in his expression. Do you? I'm not here under obligation. You cleared that. I'm not here out of gratitude because I was raised to understand that gratitude is not a foundation. It's a leash with better manners. She stayed by the door. So I want to say out loud why I am here, and then I want to tell you the price. There's a price. There's always a price. You taught me that. You just do it honestly. Then say it. I'm here because this is the first place since my father died where I've been allowed to be exactly what I am at full size, Nora said. Not smaller, not quieter, not more convenient. And I need you to understand that I'm not saying it because I'm grateful. I'm saying it because it's a fact, and facts are the only currency I've ever had. Raphael was very still. And the price, he said, the port goes legitimate. He didn't move. 40% of the freight operation, she said. Fully legal, fully documented inside 3 years. I've built the model. I've run it 4 different ways, including the way where it fails. It's on your desk in a blue folder, and I want you to read it tonight. You've been building this since the second week. Before you knew if I'd kill you for it. Yes, Nora said. He walked over to the shelf and stood there with his back to her for a moment, and she made herself wait because she had learned that the worst thing she could do in a silence with this man was fill it. Why, he said, because you told me once that knowing things kept you alive, not violence, knowing things. Her voice stayed steady. So here's what I know. You have 410 people on your payroll. Every year, a number of them stop existing, and every one of those numbers has a mother somewhere. The legitimate lines carry higher margin than the ghost freight ever did, and I can prove it on paper, and I have. You lose 14% in the first year, and you make it back in the second, and by the third, you're up 9. And nobody bleeds for the 9. Nobody bleeds for the 9. Raphael turned around. You understand what you're asking me to dismantle. Some of these arrangements are older than you. I understand I'm asking you to stop doing the thing you're best at. Then why do you think I'd say yes? Because you already know, Nora said. You've known for years. You have 80 books in this room about shipping and 30 about medicine, and not one single book about how to be a criminal and a man's shelves tell you what he actually wants to be. She took one step into the room. Because Julian Voss was with you 11 years and you never saw it coming, and it isn't because you're stupid, it's because you built a world where the only way to check a man's loyalty is to wait until he betrays you. That's not a life, Raphael. That's a waiting room. He looked at her for a long, long moment. You've been rehearsing that. For 11 days, she admitted. It shows. Is that a no? It's a maybe on the 40th, he said. It's a yes on the 25, starting Monday. And if the numbers hold in 18 months, we talk about the rest. He paused. And it's a no on the tone you just used with me, which nobody has used in this house in 20 years. I'll keep the tone. I know you will, Raphael said and sat down and rubbed his eyes with one hand in a way she had never seen him do in front of anyone. Sit down. There's something I should have told you 7 weeks ago. She sat. The debt was $9,500, he said. Nora went completely still. What? Your father did sign both names, both loans exactly as she told you. The principal was 9,500 and you had already paid down most of it, which is why you had 11,000 in receipts and she never wanted you near the safe. He kept his eyes on her. The rest of the 40 was hers. 22,000 in sportsbook losses, 6 on your stepsister's cards. She rolled it all under your father's original signature and presented it to me as one obligation. You knew, Nora said. I knew before I got out of the car. I am not a careless man about paperwork. You knew and you sat in his chair and you let her say it to my face. Yes, she was on her feet without deciding to be. I spent the first week in this house thinking I was property. Her voice finally broke and she let it. I sat on that bed and I did math about how many years of my life I owed you. I was 24 years old and I calculated my own remaining lifespan against $40,000 and you knew it was 9. I did. Why? Because I ran your name before I ever left the city, Raphael said. And what came back was a woman with 2 years of a supply chain program, an EMT certification she let expire because she couldn't afford the renewal fee, and 4 years of holding up a household of 3 people who contributed nothing. His voice did not rise. It went, if anything, quieter. And I have been in a great many rooms with a great many people, Nora. I know what a person looks like after they've broken. You weren't that. You were still fighting it, and you were losing, and you had maybe a year left in you. So you bought me. I removed you, he said, and then I gave you a locked door and a file room, and I waited to see what you'd do with them, because I have spent my entire life recognizing useful things and putting them where they can function, and I did not think that woman had the right to spend you. You should have told me. Yes. You should have told me the first morning. Yes, Raphael said. I should have. I'm telling you now because you've earned the truth several times over. And because you just stood in this room and told me to my face what my own life should look like. And I'm not going to take that from someone I'm still lying to. Nora stood there with her hands shaking and let it go through her. 7 weeks of thinking she'd been bought. And underneath it all along, a man who had looked at a stack of falsified loan paperwork and made a decision he'd never once tried to get credit for. 9,500, she said. Yes. She sold me for $30,500 of her own gambling debt. Yes, Nora laughed. It came out wrong, half a sob in it. God, she'd have taken 20. She opened at 15, Raphael said. I told her the number was 40, and she took it in under a minute. Nora stopped laughing. You raised it. I raised it. Why? Because I wanted her to say the number out loud in front of you, Raphael said. I wanted you to hear exactly what she thought you were worth, said in her own voice in that room with you standing there. Because I knew you'd never leave otherwise. Women like you don't leave. They stay and they carry it until it kills them. He held her eyes. So I made her put a price on you where you could hear it. It was the cruelest thing I have ever done to someone I meant to help, and I'd do it again, and you may hate me for it. Nora sat back down slowly. That's why I remember it, she said, the counting. Not the stairs, not her hand in my hair, the counting. I know. You did that on purpose. I did. She was quiet for a long time. Then I owe you something, she said finally. Not money. I need you to hear this, and I need you not to say anything clever after it. She looked up. You told Bianchi I wasn't available for his offer, didn't you? Before you cleared the debt. Raphael did not answer immediately. Yes. So you were certain I'd stay? No, he said. I was certain I didn't want you to go. Those are different things, and I've learned recently to be more careful about the difference. Something in his face came unguarded than the way she had never seen it in any room with anyone else. I'm not a simple man to be near, he said. I don't have a simple life. What I can offer you is, I know what you can offer, Nora said. I've been watching for 7 weeks. I know what this life is and what it isn't. I know that a man came through your service door once, and another one will try eventually. I'm not afraid of complicated, Raphael. I was raised in complicated. I just needed to be honest. It will be honest, he said, that I can promise without qualification. Then we have a deal. And Rafael Castellano, who almost never smiled, who had built his entire adult life around the management of his own face, smiled. It was not large. It didn't need to be. It reached his eyes, and it was entirely and exclusively for her, and she took it and put it somewhere it would stay. 6 months later, she stood at the head of a table with 12 men around it. The agenda was hers. The analysis was hers. The chair had not existed a year ago and had been created for her, and she had walked into it without ceremony and without apologizing to anybody for it. 25% was Monday's target, she said. We closed at 31. Legal freight is running 4 points above projection, and the insurance rate came down in April, which nobody expected, including me. And the Delaware money, sitting where Bianchi put it, clean documented earning. One of the older men shifted. And if Ferrara comes back, he won't come back for the money, Nora said. He'd have to explain to 3 other organizations why he lost it. That's the whole point of taking it that way instead of burning it. It isn't a wall, it's a leash. She turned a page. But you're right to ask, so we're going to spend 20 minutes on it, and then we're going to spend an hour on the Providence contracts because that's where we're actually going to get hurt this year. Nobody argued. They didn't argue because Raphael had said publicly once in this room that her word carried the same weight as his, and because she had privately earned it in a way every man at that table had watched happen, and those two things together made an arrangement nobody in the world was interested in testing. Theo Lanigan still worked in the vehicle bay. He said good morning to her every day with his eyes on the ground for the first 4 months, and then one morning in the 5th, he looked up when he said it, and she nodded, and that was the entire conversation, and it was enough. Emmett Doyle had a new job title and a new olive oil supplier. Bruno Okafor had taught her over 8 weeks in considerable protest on both sides how to get out of a car fast and how to put a door frame between herself and a hallway. And he never once mentioned the night she'd told him to give her 40 minutes, but he had stopped arguing when she asked for a room. And Marta Vogel, who had said, "You are not a prisoner here, but you are also not free to leave," brought her coffee at the head of that table on a Tuesday morning and set it down and said nothing at all, and the nothing said everything. Nora thought about her father sometimes in the middle of that work. He had taught her to read a ledger at 16 at a kitchen table with a bad lamp. He had taught her that a person can be gentle and not be weak, and that the two things are unrelated, and that most people never figure that out. He had loved her without conditions for 21 years, and then he had gotten frightened at the end and signed a piece of paper that nearly cost her everything. She had forgiven him for that a long time ago, sometime in the 2nd month, quietly without ceremony. He would not have predicted this. He would have been horrified by parts of it, but he would have understood it. He would have looked at the room and the table and the numbers and his daughter standing at the head of all of it, and he would have recognized it because it was the thing he had always known was in her and had run out of time to see. Margot called twice more from different numbers in the first year. Nora did not answer either one. She felt nothing at all when she hung up, and after the second one, she stopped checking whether she felt nothing, which was how she knew it was actually over. Sloan sent a letter, 4 pages. Nora read the first paragraph, which was about how hard things had been for Sloan, and put it in a drawer unfinished, and it is still in that drawer. Under the table, Raphael's hand found hers. Briefly, no announcement, no display, just a point of contact, the weight of one person's certainty meeting her own. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the room, on the work, on 12 men waiting for her to turn the page. She squeezed back. The girl who had been dragged down a staircase by her hair and sold for a number her stepmother counted out loud in a lit room, who had packed a bag in 11 minutes and taken nothing that wasn't hers, who had walked into a stranger's house with a dead man's watch and an expired card and refused every single day to make herself smaller so that other people could be comfortable, had not survived because someone rescued her. She had survived because of what was already in her waiting for a room big enough to stand up in. They had priced her at $40,000. They were wrong about the number, they were wrong about the woman, and they were wrong about the one thing that mattered most, which is that a price only means something if you agree to it. Nora Kessler never did.